when we build an attachment to somebody, we really have this connection to them that doesn't go away. And it takes a lot of time to update. Yeah, if we look at one of my favorite people in the world, her name is Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor from the University of Arizona. She's written this amazing book called The Grieving Brain. And her research shows us that when we meet with someone and we connect with them, we form an attachment bond. And the actual neurobiology of our brain changes. You know, when we meet someone that's like, you're the only one who, like, you're my only mother and I love you so much. You're the one who I love for this, you know, with
you're
that.
And even something like that.
Best friend, anything that you form this deep connection with. And it actually does change the chemistry of your brain. And with attachment, we have this idea of near, far, and closeness. And what is actually happening from the moment we form an attachment like that is this belief that we will always be together and we will always have each other. That's the like base of that love bond that forms. And she beautifully said to me the first time I sat down and spoke with her on my podcast is, well, we can't talk about grief without talking about love, Addison, because that's where it starts. And so that's where the quote earlier in this one, I think, really, really resonates as well. And what happens is I would challenge everybody right now to think about whoever they love most who's living. Right now, at any given moment, whether it's your mother, your friend, your father, if I said, if you needed to get to them right now, you would be able to explain to me how to do that. So for me, I would say, okay, my mother's at home in Toronto. So I would leave my house in Los Angeles. I would go to LAX. I would get a flight. I would get in another car. I would drive to my mother's house. And she's probably either in her house, in her garden, or at work. And what we don't realize is with that attachment bond, we have that at all times. This map is always running. And that's how we stay connected to people along with that belief. So what happens when we lose somebody is there's this learning process that she explains, this whole curve of having to update that map. And that doesn't happen right away. That happens over a long time. Also, there's two streams of information, the memories that are telling us someone has passed, they're no longer with us. You know, we got a phone call or we were at the bedside, we saw it ourselves. But then that other belief from attachment that they will always be there and there's something we can do to get them back or to have them there. And that was explained to me 13 years after being in the grief arena. So much of my book comes from experientially, but we really meet in the middle in this beautiful way of going, oh my gosh, I wasn't insane. This is what happens every time we love and we attach. You know, we sign up for this process in a way. And it's just really beautiful to think that that's what's really going on, that we're connected in this neural, in a scientific way at all times by love.
Yeah. And so I want to make sure I'm really getting this concept because this is actually really helps, I think, us understand. I feel like when I have an understanding, the reason I love the science and the neurobiology is like when I can feel like I understand what's going on, first of all, it makes me feel a lot less crazy. And second, it makes me understand that this process is normal, right? Like, it's a normal part of my experience. And so I want to make sure I'm really getting this. So what you're saying is that anybody that we know that we're close to, whether they're near, far, or close, wherever they are, we have a way that we know we're going to get to them. That's always running in the back of our brain. So I think about my grandmother, right? Or my aunt, like when my grandmother, my baka that many of you know, like our main thing was we always talked on the phone and she always answered the phone. Like Baka always answered the phone, right? And if not, she would call right back. And so I knew if I needed to get to her, I would call her. Once that's no longer an option, now my brain is having to reconfigure and recompute how to even orient my life because it has this old road that doesn't actually lead to a destination anymore. And so it's trying to figure out how to remap the connection, and that remapping and the paradox of those two things existing together is part of what leads to grief. Do I get that right?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to distinguish, as Mary Frances O'Connor would say too, that grief is this lifetime process that's not going anywhere. Grieving as a verb, you know, is the process we're talking about of learning that that map needs to update and eventually will update. The challenge, of course, is where are they on the map?
Right.
And why can't I get them back? Because I believe from this bond that I can and I will.